Hey, Sarah, is the key turned down in here tonight? Yes.
Our medical manager from there.
Thank you.
It pained me, but I did it.
Well, I was because he feels good to him outside.
We girls
We
were
just went through a cold season. Feels
It's
good.
beyond cold.
cold anymore.
Place is hot. I can't, yeah. I can't.
Budget cuts.
Oh.
Salaries. I call to order the city of Petoskey, the city council meeting for May 20th, 2024. I ask that you all rise with me for the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk Beck, would you please call roll for us?
DeMore, present. Shields,
Here.
Wagner,
Here.
Walker, present. Murphy.
Yes, present. We have a quorum. Next is a proclamation regarding International Compost Awareness. International Compost Awareness Week is May 5th to the 11th, 2024. Whereas the Compost Research and Education Foundation, along with Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom and other countries, have declared that the first full week of May to be the annual International Compost Awareness Week. Whereas composting is a way of returning organic resources to the soil and in a way of conserving water during extreme droughts or flooding conditions, reducing water consumption and non-point pollution, and a proven method of decreasing the dependence on chemical fertilizer and decreasing erosion. And whereas composting is an effective form of waste reduction, reuse and recycling, and since organic materials make up approximately 30% of the materials going into landfills, composting has become one of the primary methods communities use to reach waste diversion goals. Whereas materials such as yard trimmings, vegetable cuttings, biosolids, food scraps, manures, and hay shavings have all been composted and converted into beneficial products known as compost. And whereas communities through their local governments, highway departments, soil conservation services, and extension offices, and public work professionals have a significant impact on clean water, soil, climate change, and landfill diversion by using compost for public works projects. Whereas this year's theme of compost, Nature's Climate Champion, the 2024 theme highlights the role compost plays in fighting climate change. Those roles include decreasing methane, helping with climate change mitigation, reducing fertilizer inputs, and increasing resilience. Using compost helps to create healthier soils and helps the environment. Therefore, I, John Murphy, Mayor of Petoskey, State of Michigan, in recognition of the efforts of the United States Composting Council Michigan Chapter Compost Research and Education Foundation, Recycling Compost Residents, businesses and staff, soil conservation stewards, landscapers, farmers, public workers, gardeners, and plant growers everywhere, hereby declare that the week of May 5th to the 11th, 2024 as International Compost Awareness Week, dated today. Lindsay, this is all for you. But it's also for everybody in the community. It's important for all of us to compost. Lindsay, I know you would like to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you for declaring International Compost Awareness Week here in the city of Petoskey. It parallels both the Governor Whitmer's contribution to International Compost Awareness Week, as well as Oakland County and our friends here at Emmett County. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for composting, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Next is a presentation, and we're going to hear from Dennis Garthland and Nargarth, Traverse City. Come on down. You're going to give us the annual audit for the city finances through December 31st, 2023. Welcome. Yes, there you are.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Trina Oakes. I'm a partner with Dennis Gartland and Neargarth, and I'm here tonight to go over the financial results for the December 31st, 2023 audit. So you will have two items in front of you, the bound book, which is the actual audited financial statements, and then a separate audit related communication letter. So we'll go over some of the highlights in the audited financial statements and then go over the letter at the end. And Sarah is going to be nice enough to key through the presentation. So the first page right after the index is the independent auditor's report. That is our opinion. And the very first paragraph there, the opinion paragraph, is that we found everything was fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And so that's what's called a clean or an unmodified opinion. And that's the highest level of assurance we can provide you as auditors. These financial statements are the citywide financial statements. It does include component units, which includes the Tifa district, the library, and downtown management parking as well. So from there, we're going to go back a few pages to page 6, where it says management's discussion and analysis at the top. And the management discussion and analysis is really just a summary of the financial results, which is prepared with input from management of the city. So rather than reading the whole bound book, you can read these few pages and get a summary of what happened at the city for the year financially. So in the first section here under financial highlights, the city's net position increased by $4.5 million in 2023. And that's further broken down between governmental and business type activities and component units. So business type activities are really your electric and water and sewer activities. The governmental activities are basically everything else, all the other governmental services. And then the component units are the TIFA, the library, and downtown management parking. So total revenues and transfers for the year were $34 million. Total expenses were $29.5 million. The general fund experienced an increase of $567,000 for the year. And then under the project highlights section here, the city did perform a full reconstruction of Bridge Street. So that was one of the bigger projects for the year. And the electric system did have several upgrades, including converting from overhead to underground lines during the year. We're going to go back a couple more pages to page 8, the summary of net position. And again, this is broken down between the governmental activities, business type activities, and primary government. So the total assets and deferred outflows at December 31st, 2023 were $106.2 million. Assets, with just assets, were $103.9 million. The current portion, which is basically available to fund operations, was $42,019,000, and that is up 11% from last year. And then capital assets were $61.9 million, and that's all the buildings, equipment, furniture, vehicles, and that is approximately 60% of the total assets of the city. So those are non-liquid items, not available in cash. Under the liabilities, the total liabilities for the year were $14.4 million. Of those, $2.8 million is the current portion that will have to be paid in the next 12 months. And then the longer term portion is $11.6 million. And that's made up of $6.2 million of bonds payable that are paid over time. And the net pension liability is about $5 million of that long-term liability. So that pension liability is an estimate, and it's re-estimated every year based on information provided by MERS. And then the net position is the equity of the city. The total net position at December 31st was $91.4 million. There's a portion of that that is restricted, about $8 million. And the main restricted uses are streets, marina, refuse collection. $54.6 million is the capital assets less any debt on those assets. And so that leaves unrestricted of $28.9 million. The city does mention below that the capital assets are largely made up of electric, water, sewer, and street improvement assets. And we'll go down to the next page. That's the revenues and expenses. So the revenues are broken down between program revenues, which are items like water and sewer and electric that charge a fee for services, and then general revenues like property taxes that cover the rest of the expenses of the city. So total general revenues were $22.7 million. Total program revenues were $22.7 million. General revenues were $7.9 million. The line item here under general revenues, property taxes were $6,250,000, and those are up 8% from 2022. So total revenues for the year were $30,668,000. And then moving down to the expense section, the total expenses were $27.1 million. I did highlight on the overhead some of the larger departments of the city. So electric is by far the largest, with expenses of $10.5 million. Water and sewer is $4.2 million. Public safety is public works is $4.5 million, and public safety is $3.6 million. And overall, the expenses were very similar to 2022. So there was only about a $50,000 increase in expenses from 2023 to 2022. So overall for the year, there was a net increase in net assets of $3.8 million. And the net position at the end of the year was $91.394 million. So the change in net position in 2022 was $759,000. So overall, there was a net increase in your increase for the year of about $3 million, or a 4% increase. From there, we're going to go back many pages, back to page 58, the general fund budget to actual. Just to kind of go over some of those highlights. I don't know if you can type it in. If it'll let you. There you go. Or no. So the budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund, back on page 58, is going to show the original budget that was adopted for the general fund, the final amended budget, and then the actual for the year. So I'll let Sarah get there. Thank you for doing this. So for the total revenues, the final budget was $7.477 million, and actual revenues came in at $7.894 million. So it was better than budget by $416,786. And then expenditures were budgeted at $9,759,000. Actual was $9,540,000. So expenditures came in better than budget by $219,416. So overall for the year, the city was projecting a net loss, or almost essentially a break even, a net loss of $69,150, and came in at actual of $567,052 of net income. Now that's after $2.2 million was transferred into the general fund to help cover expenses. So the ending fund balance at the end of the year is $6,280,000. And that is 66% of your 2023 expenses. So that's a very healthy fund balance. I always like to remind everybody that these are cut off as of December 31st. So this is just when your property taxes are coming in December, and those property taxes have to last you for the rest of the year for your operations. So your fund balance is always up at December 31st and gets spent throughout the year. Are there any questions on any of the financial results or any footnotes you'd like me to go over in more detail?
Council.
Okay.
Okay.
There is also the separate audit related communication letter,
Okay.
which has more information. So this letter is items we're required to communicate to those charged with governance at the completion of the audit. The first page talks about internal controls, which is really the policies and procedures of the city. So we have to look at those to design our audit tests. And if we find anything that we have recommendations on, we would include those in this letter. So the second page does have one item, preparation of financial statements, which we're required to report each year. So under the accounting standards, it requires that management of the city prepare the entire audited financial statement with all the disclosures. So the entire book. In reality, almost nobody does that. We assist our clients with doing that. In order to do that, though, we do have to provide drafts, all of the journal entries. Those have to be reviewed and approved by management of the city so that we're still independent to issue an opinion on the financial statements. So this is just an inherent finding that we're required to report each year. We don't expect it to go away. Under qualitative aspects of accounting practices, this is letting you know that your accounting policies are listed in Note A to the financial statements. There was a new standard this year the city had to adopt regarding subscription-based information technology arrangements. So multi-year renting information technology for different kinds of services. We had to look at those. The total amount that would have been recorded was immaterial, so we passed on recording that adjustment. We noted no transactions during the year where there's lack of guidance or information on how to record the transactions. We found everything was in the proper period. There's inherently estimated amounts in the financial statements, including your net pension liability, which is re-estimated each year based on information from MERS. And then the useful lives of your fixed assets is an estimate that's used to record depreciation expense. We did look at those and found that those estimates were recorded reasonably. As far as significant disclosures, we mentioned the investment risk disclosures in Note C, the pension disclosures in Note M, and then commitments and contingencies in Note P. We had no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. In the middle of page 3, we mentioned uncorrected adjustments, corrected adjustments. The uncorrected adjustment was about $30,000 for those information technology arrangements that we did not record because it was not material for the city. The corrected adjustments were related to just some tax entries between funds. The biggest was a grants receivable that we recorded for $66,000 at the end of the year. At the bottom of the page, we just mentioned as a matter of convenience, we do post several entries to convert the modified accrual records to full accrual for your government-wide financial statements. So that includes recording all the debt, capital assets that are not carried in your funds, particularly for your component units. On page 4, there was no disagreements with management and no consultations with other accountants. On the bottom of the page, there's some more new accounting standards that are coming into play. There's one about accounting changes and error corrections. So if you have an issue where you have to change the way you're accounting for something or correct an error, this tells you how you have to present it in your financial statements. And on page 5, there's a new one for compensated absences that will be effective during the 2024 fiscal year for the city. And that relates to accrued paid time off. So the current policy that's in effect, or the GAP principle that's in effect, says you should accrue what people will be paid if they were to leave the employment of the city. So it's what they get paid on separation. The new standard says you're supposed to accrue what people may take either as leave or when they leave the city. So it could increase what the accrual is recorded on the financial statements. And then finally, under other matters, we did look at the supplementary information, budget to actual schedules, management discussion and analysis, pension trend schedules, and we reconciled those all to the books of the city and found that everything was fairly presented. So with that, is there any questions I can answer? Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a broad question to begin with. Are there any concerns in your audit that you would draw to our attention as the governing body for the city of Petoskey?
No.
Then can I direct your attention to Note C? Because I have a question for you. That's page 36 for my colleagues. Given the limits of federal insurance for deposits, what's the alternative to inherent credit risk?
That's a loaded question. So
I'm glad there's humor.
it's hard to actually get.
20 days.
Yes, yes. So in the state of Michigan, municipalities got insurance of $250,000 per checking account, or basically unlimited withdrawal accounts, and $250,000 per limited withdrawal accounts. So it's only $500,000 per bank. So when you're looking at these financial statements with millions of dollars, the city could inherently go over that amount in your bank accounts. And so what some people do is look at other sort of alternative investments, Michigan treasuries, which you already do carry some. You have to balance having enough money in your bank account to cover your bills versus investing it where you'd have to, mature something in order to make your payroll. So you have to sort of walk the line with that. Make sure you're looking at the banks to make sure they're reputable, that they haven't had any failures. So the city has done a good job. You have some really good investments. I think you're diversified, but it's rare that I don't have any clients that don't have some amount that's not covered by insurance in the bank.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question on page 38 under interest rate risk. You just make kind of an aside that we don't have a formal investment policy in this specific lane. Is that something that you would recommend? It's the statement right under interest rate risk.
So you don't have a formal investment policy that limits your investment maturities as a means of managing your risk. That's entirely an option that the city could do or not do. It's not required.
Okay.
I
You
mean,
have an investment policy, but it doesn't say, specifically don't take a CD out for 14 years at a quarter interest rate,
So this is a particular aspect of an
Right.
investment policy.
Mhm.
Okay.
Doesn't have an end date on those kind of.
Maturities, right.
You wouldn't want to invest a ton of money at 1%. You would want to live out until the interest rates go up 1%.
Right. So the way the policy is written now, it allows a little bit more flexibility. So you can see, I didn't point it out, but the investment earnings are up quite a bit in 2023 compared to 2022. And the
Right.
city does have some bonds. So those were basically had unrealized losses. The newer they are, they had unrealized losses last year and now they have unrealized gains. So not having this maturity risk allows you to be a little bit more flexible in times of changing interest rates.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Ms. Oaks.
Sure.
My other question is, and I think about this kind of in the past, to continue to understand when we look at the total net position, does that include things that the city is due to maintain into the future, such as a road or a building, a parking lot that will have to be replaced one day? That is, my assumption, not accounted for, or is that in a way accounted for in a net position?
It is not accounted for. So the maintenance of those items, the assets that are carried are at the historical cost. So it's what the city paid for them when they put them in.
Yep, so it's the maintain, but the
But they're-
replacement cost is a future.
Correct. Yeah, it's probably a much higher number than what the historical cost is, replacement cost would be.
Thank you. And I think we are in our capital improvement plans, we do a good job planning and think about those, which is also just important for the greater community to also know that those are ongoing and future responsibilities of the community to
Mhm.
maintain. Thank you.
Nothing else. Thank you very much for the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. This year, we look forward to next.
Okay, thank you.
Next is the consent agenda, and it's the adoption of the May 6, 2024 regular session city council meeting minutes, as well as the acknowledge of a receipt of certain transactions that have occurred since May 6, 2024. And I go to council for questions, changes, Anyone? Okay,
I would move that council approve the consent agenda.
I'll support. I have a motion from Ms. Demore, a second from Mr. Wagner. Any other discussion or questions? There being none, I'll go to City Clerk Beck for roll.
Demore,
Aye.
Wagner.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Walker. Yes. Murphy.
Yes. Consent agenda passes 5-0. Now we'll go to public comment. This is your opportunity. Step up to the mic, hit the button to make it green, give us your full name, full address, and the floor is yours.
I am Kim Block, 502 Grove Street here in Petoskey. I'm just here to thank the city of Petoskey for the improvements they've done at River Roads Disc Golf Course. They did it, I don't know if it's been 2 or 3 years ago, but my son and husband play all the time and I walk the course with them every time they play almost. And we refused to play there a few years ago. We would always have to go over to Harbor because it was so overgrown and so horrible. And 2 or 3 years ago, I honestly don't remember. The city went in and just did this amazing job and cleared it out. And it is our home course now. We go multiple times a week. And then just Sunday, we went again. And there was more cleanup, and you just have done a great job. We appreciate the resources, the time, the effort the city has put into the disc golf course. It looks great. It's our home course. We use it all the time, and we just really appreciate what the city does. And your Parks and Rec department has done a great job. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kim. It's nice to have somebody step up and give a positive stroke to the city. Thank you. I'm sure that City Manager Horn will make sure and pass that on to Kendall Smith, our Parks and Rec Director, and his staff. I agree with you. I've walked several times. It's unbelievably nicer than it was 2 years ago. Any other public comment? There being none, we'll go next to the City Manager's update, and I'll go to City Manager Horn for that.
Thank you, Mayor. Few updates this evening, just a update on our public meetings we've had over the last week or so. Last week, Planning Commission did meet, started discussion on kind of the zoning work, talked about zoning districts and the overlap in uses amongst zones, and kind of started the framework of discussion on kind of what that, could look like going forward. So this was kind of just the introductory discussion amongst planning commissioners. So there'll be much more discussions going forward. Also had a short discussion on temporary signs as far as being content neutral and what that, and some desire to kind of get that updated to make sure that we're in compliance with current standards as well. DMB does meet tomorrow as well. They will discuss a little bit more. They started this discussion last month. We'll continue discussion on a men's night out pop-up event application that was put together. And we'll also discuss the strategic plan, action plan, and how those priorities are moving forward. So that's tomorrow at 6 o'clock. A few project updates. As you know, we are very busy on getting projects kind of going to make sure that we're not in the way when all of our visitors arrive. So Sunset Park is going very well. We anticipate that wrapping up by the end of the month. Mike and his crew, Public Works crew, are busy on Bayview Avenue. Just updates there. New water main has been completed, currently pouring curb and gutter. Sidewalk work will happen later this week. Fine grading and paving starting next week, the week of the 28th, with restoration to follow. We're anticipating this to be wrapped up by mid-June. We also started our resurfacing projects. This is Winter Park Lane, Rose Street, and Balsam Avenue. That is not correct. Ignore that underneath it. I think I did a copy and paste in and did not update that. So my apologies there. I know that the mill was in last week. Those streets have been milled. And that work will continue, over the course of the next few weeks with that. Also, I know the completion is by mid-June for those resurfacing projects as well. The other big project for streets is East Mitchell. This is resurfacing from Division Street to the city limits. We will have a small work that will be getting started this week. Kind of, if you remember the crosswalks from Division to the city limits, many of those are concrete crosswalks. We need to take those out before the mill arrives. So we'll be doing some concrete saw cutting this week, removing the concrete crosswalks. We'll be putting some temporary patches in the following week, and then the mill will arrive. And so we're consistent from a contour standpoint. The mill will arrive and paving start the week of the 10th of June. And then that is anticipated to be complete before our busy July 4th weekend. So those projects are continuing, moving forward. Emmett County is also taking off from our limits and going to Division Street. That's Division, right? Yeah, in the township in Bear Creek. Division Road. Yes, thank you. So they'll be going to their limits as well. So Emmett County will be taking that up during the same project. So that'll be a nice project to kind of very good coordination amongst jurisdictions. So we certainly appreciate that. One more reminder on our rubbish collection program that starts this week. Starting tomorrow, this would be properties west of Howard. For the next 2 weeks, tomorrow and then the following Tuesday, folks can set items out at the curb. There's a very healthy list of things that we do accept, and that is on our website. We encourage people to take a look at what we accept and what we cannot accept, so we don't have any confusion. So the following day on Wednesday, the 22nd, then we'll flip over and do east of Howard for the 2 Wednesdays, the 22nd and the 29th. So we certainly encourage folks to participate and help clean up properties from our winter season. And then I wanted to bring council up to speed. We have entered into a relationship with Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council to use some of the equipment that they've acquired. So this is a Pixie drone that we will be using in the marina that will help pick up plastics and any floating debris in the water. So this is remote controlled. It'll be launched here in the marina and kind of go in and out of the bays, if you will, trying to pick up any sort of floating debris in and around the marina. So this is a free service that Tip of the Mitt is providing. So I really want to give them credit for reaching out and including us in this effort. So this will collect material. All the floating material will obviously bring it to shore. They'll catalog it, kind of figure out how much debris it's collected, and then they'll do this a few times during the season. And then they also provide a beach, a different piece of equipment that runs along the beach. However, as you all know, we're a fairly rocky area, so this is more designed for sand beaches where it kind of it grades the sand and picks up material that's in the sand. So the state park, I believe, is utilizing that service, but we are, again, fairly rocky, so I didn't see necessarily a match for that piece of equipment, but we'll certainly put this to work. So we're certainly appreciative of the partnership with Tip of the Mitt. Any questions for me?
There'll be detours.
Yes.
Well planned,
Absolutely.
tying in with the county all the way up to
Yes.
Division Road.
Yep.
Mrs. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shane, for your report this month. I also wanted to add that the Petoskey High School robotics team for the second year in a row will be actually collecting electronics at the curb, and those are normally televisions and electronics, which are normally excluded from the rubbish collection because of the recyclability out at the Emmett County Recycling Center. And so these very due diligent robotics students will be collecting with trucks and trailers, and we're getting them set up with a staging area at North Central Michigan College for them to collect the electronics if they do find it at the curb, and then bring them out. And they have a certain stipend with us to recycle those electronics for free.
Great. It's great.
And then also the drone,
Mhm.
we're going to be receiving the materials that they collect after they audit it and see if we have any opportunities for recyclability in secondary end markets.
Yes, great, great.
Mr. Moore.
My question is follow up to my colleague. So how are folks to know that they can put out those electronics?
It's not advertised, but it always is pretty inevitable that people will put out electronics every time, in addition to things like mattresses, which are recyclable, but not collected at the curb. So there is really no way of knowing. They're just going around and collecting them because there is a need. Otherwise, they would be tagged by the city of Petoskey with an orange sticker that says, this doesn't belong at the curb for cleanup, and here are your options.
So should we let constituents know about this, or are you looking only for inadvertency?
I think it's just to not muddy the waters. Like, this is an effort for them to kind of fall behind because the rules are set pretty much with the intention of, like, the city knows what its budget is for the rubbish collection program. So I think as this is the second year, we're fine with moving forward with that. And maybe a conversation would be for the next year's rubbish collection program. What are some of the opportunities of things that we're seeing? And maybe is there a way forward to get those from the curb to the facility for recycling?
Thank you.
Anything else, council? There being none, thank you, City Manager Horn, for the excellent updates. Next is the consideration of the appointment to the Board of Review. This is 1 second. Bill. Bill Hicklin. I can tell you, if you look at his resume, Crooked Tree Board, very involved. Wish I could find it.
29.
29, that's it. Bill was very excited when I called and said I would like to. 29, there's 29, another 29.
Oh, really?
I don't know. Oh, you know what? Here, I know what we are. Sorry.
There you go.
It's like a Bible up here. I thought I should mention to you, Bill is from Bay Harbor. When I called, he said he was so excited to serve on it. He felt that his responsibility isn't just to learn more about tax assessment and allocations, but he said it was to enhance, it would afford him the ability to educate the residents. And I asked him, I said, that's great. So put that on the memo to you guys, because I felt it's very important. Anytime we can get somebody that will educate his neighbors, his residents, especially Bay Harbor, where they may not have as much representation due to a lot of them being summer people. So it was great. He's involved with SCORE, lectures at the college, Rotary of Petoskey Board of Directors, Bay Harbor Community Council member, and treasurer at Crooked Tree. I just thought it was important to let you know we have somebody that really, I think, is really qualified. He's a registered surveyor and he's a registered professional engineer. So what better person can we have on this board? So I bring his name forward. Mr. Wagner.
I would like to make a motion to approve Mr. Hicklin as one of my Ward 3 residents.
I'll be happy to second, Mayor.
I have a motion from Mr. Wagner, second from Ms. Walker. Any other discussion, council? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Wagner.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Demore.
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Congratulations, Bill, wherever you are. Further discussion of old business is the proposed ordinance that would amend Appendix A, Article 17, general provisions of the zoning ordinance to include new section 1719.0, the electric vehicle charging station. So I'll turn it over to our city manager Horn for information.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is on, again, for just a discussion. We had some feedback at the last meeting. I got back with John Michelangeli. I don't know if John's on the line. He was going to try to join. He had a conflict in Harbor Springs this evening. So I know he looked at some comments that were passed forward to him. I believe he reached out to Councilmember Shields and had some discussions as well. I did hand out in front of you a few changes proposed by Councilmember Shields. Really, the purpose of tonight is to further discuss and make any modifications, as council desires, so we can kind of firm this up at some point and kind of complete the process potentially if that's the desire of council. But I did not want to force this or push this any faster than council wanted to go. So I kind of pulled back, and we'll have another discussion this evening and try to make this as best as it can be for city council. So I'll open it up to your comments.
Can I ask, you have read these letters, your opinion on your status of educating us as council?
Yeah, I mean, there was some concern that this was, again, more barriers were thrown in front of folks, and that's certainly, in my mind, not the intent of this ordinance. Obviously, anyone can take their own viewpoints from what we're trying to accomplish, but I think we were trying to have some development standards, some equipment standards, make sure that setbacks are appropriate, that public safety is aware where these charging stations will be going, just so we have record of it when we roll up on a scene. We know that potential scene has a charging device on the site. So I think it's valuable and useful to have that information and knowledge. So and in the commercial side, I don't think there's any issues or concerns with the commercial. I think the desire is to try to work with the developer to put in technology that that moves this type of development forward, that provides incentives to do so. If that means making sure that we take a look at our parking requirements, and so we don't penalize a developer for putting charging stations in a parking space, but we try to work with them to say, if a place needs, for instance, 12 parking spaces and they want to put a UV charging station in, don't make them put an extra parking space in just because they want to do a UV charging station. So work with the developer to try to incentivize them to put this type of technology and incorporate that within their development. It's kind of the idea, and then having a standard, because we've never had standard guidelines to go by when we look at developments. So this helps us accomplish that.
Do you run this by public safety?
Yes, public safety, public works, Emmett County building have all provided feedback and
felt this was
incorporated in this.
Incorporated.
Yeah. Okay.
Now let's go to Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, my concerns that I was addressing, and this was brought up last time, were on the idea, again, focused on the private use and the desire to not have extra redundant red tape, government red tape, with the appropriate jurisdiction of the county for some of these things that could be taken care of. And while I had a great conversation with Mr. Michelangeli, and we agreed that a lot of my concerns were correct. There is some redundancy, and it is a lot of the jurisdictions for the permits are the county. I do feel that my concerns are not as strong. I see I respect the value for having some of this redundancy. In case in point, having for private use for a citizen to file a zoning permit to have a charging station to, in a sense, plug their charger into an existing outlet. To me, it seems unnecessary, but as Mr. Eichelangeli pointed out, that it can serve as a reminder to our citizens for the need to get a county electrical permit. That's fine. And then also as a way for our public safety to have a list of garages or areas where our electric vehicles are plugged in. Again, I'm okay with that. So in the end, I don't know if it's necessary. I think the red tape I was talking about is a very low burden. And so I am not opposing the ordinance as written. I will just echo that, with new technologies, there's a lot of fears and of safety. And there is due diligence that's needed with electrical vehicles, but I also want to say that they are safe, and so people can go through the proper due diligence, proper permits, and do electric vehicle charging safely. But I will not be opposing this ordinance.
Mr. Moore.
So just as a point of understanding, there's 2 red changes in this. Did those emanate from your discussions and are those, what I'm seeing in red, are those the only proposed changes from what we reviewed before? I don't know who to put this with.
So yeah, if I can clarify, I had sent Mr. Eichelangeli and Manager Horn a different version with other areas struck out.
Okay.
And so I am rescinding that. I'm not requesting to move forward with those changes. And those are maybe artifacts of what was left over from that discussion. I have not seen those versions, and I would not be supportive of that.
Okay, so we're still working with the original then, because one of these was a point of concern for me, and I was going to discuss that, but if we're still back with where we were last time.
Yes, with what was in the packet.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a question. So if we could turn to page 36. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. So it would be, I should probably outline the sentence number, correct? So 1719.2 under compliance, which would be, see, now we have 2 different versions. Maybe 57 in the previous document and 50 in today's document. So that paragraph under 17.
Hold it.
I think, let's just go by the packet document.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're using the packet document.
Okay, thank you.
So you're talking 57 to 62.
Which reminds me of the short-term rental ordinance. What page are we on? Okay, so with the previous document that was in the packet, so it'd be 59. So it says it is unlawful to construct or install or cause to be constructed or installed any electric vehicle charging station upon any property within the city in violation of the requirements of this section. Any charging station installed prior to the adoption of this section shall be grandfathered until its replacement, provided it is in compliance with the electrical code. And then that 1719.3 right below it kind of explains what that is. And it just seemed like those first 3 sentences in 66, 67, and 68 were the cause for what seemed to be burdensome. So the need to obtain a zoning permit from the City of Petoskey zoning administrator or other designated city official. The permit application shall be accompanied by a plot plan prepared by a licensed professional architect, engineer, landscape architect, professional community planner, or land surveyor. So all I just see is like dollar signs, dollar signs, dollar signs, dollar signs, and like the need to go to a professional. So I think that's where a lot of the concern that I heard was about like overreaching or redundancy. And so is that the point? Was that the section that was addressed accordingly to everybody's satisfaction? Or,
The properties, residential zone properties are not required to submit an official plot plan. You can see that on 72, line 72. The requirement for submission of an official plot plan is not required for property zone residential.
if it's inside the
If it's
structure.
inside, yeah. So when I talk to John about it, and we see this all the time, you as a property owner can submit a plot plan and we accept those. You don't have to spend money on a licensed architect. You can submit your own plot plan and we do accept those.
Okay, so like what you would be like your own version of architectural renderings? Okay.
Yep.
For residential. Right, and so if it was a commercial entity, that has different rules and regulations, which are in the following language, following up at post-residential.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and Sarah brought this up too on 74 and 5. It talks about a plot plan drawn to scale by the owner for stations that are outside as well, so.
And so then that let's say that where there's business districts will be zoned be zoned non-residential, but there could be residential homes in there or multifamily. That becomes part of a business and that's differently regulated body.
Yes.
So you could be a residential in a zoned business and you would still fall under the auspice of business because of default living as a resident in a business zone or a mixed use zone as well.
Yes, it's based on zoning, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? I think we could move forward next meeting. I'm putting this on
Okay.
motion.
Yep, and if there's any more feedback you have between now and the next meeting, please feel free to reach out. Happy to have further discussions with myself or John.
Ms. Walker.
So then Mayor, that means that this is the official second reading and then we have a, no, this is not an official second reading?
And then this is not a second reading, no.
Okay.
We would kind of, as I see it, we would start the process next meeting.
Because there is some language change from the first reading to the second reading, which requires like a reboot of the project.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So second reading followed by first reading if everything goes well the next meeting.
So I'm still unclear on what the language change is.
What's in the packet is what sounds like we're going with.
Right, so that's what we had last time.
But the way I noticed this was we were just on for discussion.
Okay.
So I anticipated changes that would happen as a result of the tonight. So I didn't want to have this on for second reading
Sure.
because I anticipated there to be further language changes.
So could the next one be the second reading?
I can ask Jim Murray if that would,
Because it's the same.
because we didn't change it.
We haven't changed it.
So I
Possibly.
anticipated again that we would be making changes. So I think we could move this forward for second reading, but I'll ask the city attorney.
Mr. Wagner.
Quick comment. I wanted to thank Derek and John, like Angeli, for having that discussion and working through it. So I know I left here confused on the level 1, 2, 3 last time and safety and what it meant. And so I'm glad that got rectified.
Okay, we'll go to new business. Adoption of a proposed resolution that would establish the property tax millage rates for 2024. And that would authorize appropriations of property tax revenues into various city funds as previously have been approved as a part of the city's 2024 annual budget. I'll turn it over to city manager. Who wants to take this?
I'm gonna volley it over to our finance director. This is kind of housekeeping. We do this time of year every year, so I'll turn it over to Audrey to kind of give us a summary.
All righty, I was hopeful that we would have 2 years in a row without the rollback, the Headley rollback, but we did have it for 1 year. So because of the state's inflationary rate of 1.05 and the amount of increases, taxable value increases that we had, $18 million of additions we had, 2.5 million of losses. So between all of that, we ended up having to roll back to, what is it? Right here, 0.34 of a millage. So our millage rates last year, just for the city only, was 13.1523. This year it's 12.8089. So taxable values have increased 5%. That's where it's capped by state law. So we have a tax loss of 238,000 because of the Headley Amendment. But we do have all of those additions that are not additions and property uncappings. So between all of that, we almost are like net for what we had budgeted. So I don't know what I said last year. Yeah, so we have taxable values. The increase was 10.48, and I was kind of curious because since I worked here, we never had an increase that large, and I went back through all the millage rates throughout the years. And the last time it was that high was the late 90s, and that was due to the billing of Bay Harbor. And at that time, I think we had like increases between 18 and 25%. So it was kind of interesting. But it's the highest, and I think there's only 2 other units within Emmett County that have the increased property tax value that or increase that we did this year. One being Littlefield Township, and I think Redmond Township. When I looked at the county equalization booklet that they put out this year, so I thought that was really interesting that people must be maybe branching out further north.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yes, but the good news is we did have,
Kind of
increase.
flush.
Definitely increase in our property values. And so we are expected, we had the tax loss, but like I said, increase in revenue is 197. So.
So roughly 42,000,
Mhm.
basically.
And then so the second page, so
42.
shows what was originally for our tax revenues. Less the TIFAs and Act 429 at Bay Harbor leave us with a net tax revenues.
Okay. Mr. Moore.
So Ms. Plath, is there a way for folks that this is not their bailiwick, which is most of us, to explain to the general public in a way like the practical impact of this on them? Is there a way to do that?
There is. So their taxable value from last year, which would be on their tax bill, they would times that by 5%, so 1.05. That would be their increase to their taxable value. So if we did not have to roll back the millage and we stayed at the 13.1523, that's what you would multiply it out. But since we're rolling back, you would now take that, say it's $50,000.
Okay.
Times 5% or 1.05 would be 52,500 as your new taxable value.
Okay.
Our new millage amounts are 12.8089. So if you times that and divide by 1,000, because it's $1,000 per every mill of value, that would give you your new tax bill.
Very minimal increase.
Right. Yeah, with the rollback, net with the increase. So it won't be an increase like last year where it was just 5% straight with no rollback.
So let me make sure I got this right. So taxable value times 1.05% equals the increase in to taxable value times 12.8089 divided by 1,000 is the new tax bill.
Correct.
Awesome.
And you can send any phone calls my way.
Will do.
All right.
Thank you.
Ms. Walker,
So the kindergarten version would be property taxes went up, and that's kind of inevitable, but what we have to do, because your property taxes went up, because the value of your property has increased, it's across the board everywhere, we have to roll back the millage taxation. That's what the state requires us to do. So you'll have an increase in your taxable property, but it'll only be 1%, and we'll have less millages that we're paying for as part of your
Yeah.
taxable value.
Right, if it was only an increase of 1%,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Mr. Shields,
Thanks, Rick. The 12.08 number,
Mhm.
how do we get to that 12?
That is based on the state's formula, so it's last year's taxable rate divided by this year's taxable rate, which is the county assessor, or the assessors determine that value. And then it is divided, that it's plus your additions, all of your additions, which ours were 18 million, less your losses. So when you times that out, it came out to 1.051. But the state can only increase up to 5%. Does that make sense?
I can pass on that calculation that was done, so maybe that would make more sense if you see it in front of you.
And I have it right here
Yeah.
too.
You make mine in red Crayola. Maybe green, actually, I think.
And so we've, the city can ultimately go up to like 18 mils. So we're currently at 12.8 with the rollback. So to increase millage, it would be then going to the voters asking for a certain
an override.
or certain different type of fund to have another sort of millage to go to support something if that was needed.
Correct, you could do an override, or you could just have a separate millage based on a certain need that the city or council.
Yeah, I was reading, I believe it was Ferndale, where they're going to the voters for an override, but they're dedicating that. Like 4 mils of that restoration of their millage to public safety and parks related projects. Sometimes when you go to the voters to restore your millage with an override, there's a tendency for maybe a lack of trust that you're going to do what you said you were going to do versus dedicating, whether it's public safety or parks, where though that money can only be used for that purpose. That's typically been a better avenue to go down, but certainly restoring or overriding the Headley losses they're not as successful typically, but certainly there's always options.
Thank you.
I like the idea if we did go for millage or increases of any type, going for a specific millage so that you know exactly what you're going to get for what you vote for versus taking a chance in a way. Promises are great, but this is a dried ink. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So for example, let's see, perhaps it was last year or the year before, the fire station, like the fire truck, that millage was all kind of spent or accounted for. So then the availability for other additional millages comes to the table or comes to the forefront. So we had talked about potentially in the future, what would like a Parks and Rec millage look like? And that would be like very much like you were saying, like tied to this very specific department and with like a certain amount of clarity.
Yeah.
Are there any new millages that will be falling off or any millages that we have in place right now that will be
Retired.
retired? Thank you.
No,
Not millages, but there's debt service that's falling off.
For the library
Is
or?
it the Bear River or is it, which one is it? Do you recall?
well, that's falling off the debt schedule,
The debt schedule, yeah,
right, but that's not part of our millage,
right. Yeah, but we do have some debt that's maturing, right?
correct?
But as the millages that stand in place right now, they don't get automatically renewed. It has to go to a vote of the public.
Right, which those are the library millages.
Okay,
Those are voted millages.
okay. And so what you're saying is there isn't anything that we will have that will be I'm sorry, like retired anytime in the next 2 or 3 years.
No,
These will be ongoing for quite some time. And do they have like years attached to them, each millage?
the general fund is just a general fund right of
Right.
way. They just have those set by the state.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they're a lot less than they were.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, I think you pretty much answered my question. There's like set, and then there's ones that require a vote, like the library fund will require a vote of.
Library of
Okay,
the college,
correct.
debt for schools.
Petoskey Public Schools, HRM, okay,
The sinking fund.
okay. Thank you for answering that. And then at what point do we start to have the conversation about like, what Parks and Rec millage could look like and if it's palatable to the voter?
Yeah.
Is it political will to make it happen? Would people vote for a Parks and Rec millage? Obviously, they have to be very carefully crafted and agreed upon. I guess I'm just wondering about like those next steps.
Yeah, we certainly want to get our story going forward. We want to kind of complete the master plans for the parks that we have budgeted for. So we do have the needs assessment that's out there, and it's a great document. We certainly realize that doing something in November is not attainable. So I think having further discussions, either individually, making tours of parks. First and foremost, we need to see if there's a desire among council to have further discussion amongst yourselves on this topic, and then kind of figure out what that could look like. What if it's a 10-year millage? And there's communities that we talked to just a couple of weeks ago that just had one passed in perpetuity, and I can't imagine how that would feel, but certainly 5-year is difficult, but 10-year, I think, gives us time to prove that this is where your money went to, and people can have, there's a visual that they can see that we accomplished X, Y, and Z over that 10-year period, and they can walk and put their eyes on it. 5 years, it's difficult to do that. So I would say at least a 10-year. We would certainly take in perpetuity. That would be outstanding, but that might be a little, I know. But I think we need to have further discussions, kind of where each of you are at and kind of, I'm
willing to take a close look at.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
But certainly we don't want to rush it. We want to have good discussion, good dialogue, and November is going to be, as we all know, a little bit of a interesting time. So we want to kind of stay out of that.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Thank you. Thanks for answering my question.
Yep.
Anything else on that millage piece? I need a motion. Yeah. Lynn.
Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion that would establish the 5-year property tax millage rates for 2024 and would authorize appropriations from such levies to the general fund, library fund, and right-of-way fund. Support.
I have a motion from Ms. Wagner and a second from Mr. Moore. Any other? Huh? Walker.
I may have this.
We're gonna have to split, if we split them up, it'd be easier. Any other discussion, council? Does the public wish to weigh in on this? This is your opportunity to address council. We'll be in, I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Walker.
Yes.
Demore. Aye. Shields.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Next on the agenda is the adoption of a proposed resolution that would authorize the city manager to implement additional parking enforcement tools, including towing and use of the barnacle vehicle immobilizer on a trial basis. I turn it over to city manager.
Okay, I think Amy is going to run through a short presentation and be available for your questions. Amy?
Thank you. Returning after the presentation in April, and I am joined on this presentation by April Sanders, our Parking Mobility and Accessibility Director, as well as two Downtown Management Board members who are also on the Parking Committee. They have all been, Jennifer Shorter and Drew Smith. They have been involved in this discussion much longer than I have. So just wanted to briefly go through this presentation. Hold on. Now try. There we go. Again, the parking system exists to serve the downtown businesses. As I related the last meeting, in 1974, the city eliminated parking requirements for downtown. That was great to keep our character and our downtown core. But that essentially put the responsibility of providing parking from a business to the city. And so because we have so many different user groups, we have to balance the need of parking all of them. And that is done by differentiating the different areas for short versus long-term users. And again, the majority of people that use our system play by the rules. And if on occasion they get a ticket, 73% pay without penalty. So what we're here tonight to talk about are the habitual users or habitual abusers that choose to not follow the rules. And that not only affects the city gathering revenue, but it affects other businesses and their ability to have customers parking. And it also affects those who do play by the rules. And the table that I provided here is also in your agenda memo. I understand the concern being targeting people that maybe aren't abusers. This will show you that we have some individuals that consistently get tickets, do not pay them. And it's been going on for up to 6 years. And you can see they have recent tickets. So this isn't, I think it's been out there that we've been talking about this. It does not seem to have changed behaviors yet. But that is the goal of adding some of these more physical enforcement mechanisms. Because we're going to small claims court, we're doing mediation, we are going, so we're going the legal route, but that takes time and it takes money. And so trying to get ahead of this and address some of these habitual abusers is the goal of these tools. Again, the parking committee is made up of downtown business owners, and they have discussed this for several years. They've researched methods and additional enforcement tools, and they recommended to the full management board to move ahead with specifically the Barnacle vehicle immobilizer, but also towing. And the Barnacle is something we actually lease. So we could lease it for several months. It doesn't work for us. And we decide we're not going to lease it anymore. So it is a more trial basis on that. But we feel that versus using the boot is a more effective method. And so before you tonight is a resolution authorizing the city manager. Again, we don't have all the details worked out yet, but to move forward both on towing and use of the Barnacle. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So, Mr. Moore.
So my question is, during this 6-year period where these amounts accumulated, specifically what enforcement efforts have been undertaken beyond continuing just to ticket? And anybody that,
No, it should stay with Amy. She can ask
Okay.
somebody to speak for her.
Okay, yep, I will have April address that.
okay, thank you.
April was not there though the last 6 years, correct?
I was not. I've been here since September. So,
Sorry.
but historically, so some of the folks, they were sent to collections during that time. And this is one person that has accumulated 72 tickets. They are sent a letter when it reaches 50, and then a second letter when it reaches $100. So it is clear that they know that they're in violation, and we're following up and trying to get that information, as well as a payment plan little slip is also left on their car once they start accumulating significant tickets.
So if I could follow up,
Mhm.
if you said it was sent collections, so was there legal action involved with that particular one?
No.
Why not?
Well, the collections process it was during COVID, so 2020, the collections process changed so that they could no longer pursue people with a threat against their driver's license being suspended or reporting it to collections. So any sort of actual teeth to get into recouping this money fell off the wayside. So it's just the folks that are either in collections that they took to the court through the legal system that we actually paid for. And then 40% of whatever they collect on our behalf, 40% stays with collections and we get 60%.
But what about through the courts?
Through the court, we have, the first one was mediated. That was before me. And then the second one that we just went through mediation last week is still TBD.
So for A through G, referencing A through G, and again, not to put you on the spot, you've only been here since September, so I don't know is a fine answer. But as to A through G, which one of, if any of these folks have been taken to court during any time going back 6 years to try to recover?
None of the folks on that list have been in court or mediation.
Because
I would say the lack of support from our city attorney.
It's okay to say that.
Yeah,
Miss Shorter.
Yeah, so we've also, over the years, have tried to bring court cases, and we have been told by the judges they're not interested in pursuing it. So there's been, an attitude of that it's not worth the court's time. So we've worked hard behind the scenes to try and get that, to where we can do that, but it does cost money. And it takes time, and then when there is a judgment, then they're put on a payment plan and we might see $50 a month. Those are some of the objections that we've heard over the years. I've been on the parking committee for a very long time.
So, but does that change with different judges being elected and getting into the system?
It has gotten better, I think, in the last 6 months, which is why we put on an approach, but I'm not on that side of it.
Well, just as a point of clarification, are you saying, Ms. Shorter, that on the record in a courtroom, the judge said it was not worth his or her time?
No. No.
Okay, so how did that
That
message?
was conversations were, was going to be brought forward and as I recall, I was not personally part of those conversations.
Thank you.
Mr. Shields.
I think this is a great idea. And as you mentioned, in this conversation, courts are costly to, a lot of times in this type of financial, amounts. Pursuing the, litigation is a feel-good type of action and not necessarily a come out equal action, financially. So that, I think this is a a good direction to take and in support of this. Thank you.
I totally support the Barnacle, but I also think that we should look at going after these through the courts, these A through Gs with the amount. I can't believe that the courts, would turn that down, $22,000 a year, amounts. If you Barnacle that 22,000 person, he comes in or she comes in and gives you $250 to get the Barnacle off.
Mhm.
Their payment plan is going to be very similar to the courts. Is that correct?
What we do with a payment plan, we want to set people up for success. So if they can only commit to paying $50 a month, then it will be a very long process for them. But we don't want to extend people on, say, $250 a month when they can't do it.
But is that how the court deals with it as well?
I'm not sure. I've not been through the court process. We went through mediation, which was, we had negotiated back and forth to find what the person could commit to paying successfully on a monthly basis. And it was generally about the same amount that we thought.
Uh-huh.
So if successful, it should be paid off in 6 years.
Well, I think we should be, I'm totally for the Barnacle. I think you should have more than one. I think we should have 3 or 4 going at once, okay? Seriously. But I also feel for some of these big hitters, I think going back to court, just to, not for a feel good, but to establish that we're going to get the money sooner or later, 6 years or not. Ms. Walker.
Yeah, thank you, April, and thank you, Amy, because I know that this has been a long discussion and you're looking for amicable and effective solutions. So I very much appreciate that. So if we were to follow through on today's recommendation, could we also add something in there, Mayor, that would say that Shane, as the city manager, to be the person authorized to work with the DMP and the downtown offices, could there be some kind of follow-up with legal counsel about the context of what that would look like in a courtroom in the future? And if our city attorney would be willing to engage in those conversations again? Mayor Shane?
Yeah, we did a test case when Matt was still with us. Kind of wanted to see how it would go. I think we were pretty successful getting that accomplished. Jim Murray had a second one. We had a second one that went through the court. So I think we wanted to try to get an idea what would be acceptable to the court. So I think now that we have some feedback, we can continue to pursue folks on that list for sure.
Mr. Moore.
Just out of curiosity, because I don't know the history of this, based on what Ms. Sanders just suggested, is there any reason, I mean, typically an attorney can take 7 cases at a time and just move them forward. Was there any reason that didn't happen? Because this has been allowed to accumulate to almost an incredible extent.
Actually, it's over 400,000, isn't it?
Close.
Yeah, was there a reason that there was a need felt to have a test case, or, and maybe you can't answer that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask the city attorney. Mr. Shields.
So I am also not opposed to going through the courts and litigation. My comment about feel good is, a lot of times we have the desire to have true justice done. And I'm saying sometimes let's make it based off numbers. Math, let's do the math. Is the cost of the lawyers justify going that route? If we can make the math work, absolutely, let's do that. That's all I want to say.
Mr. Moore.
Again, I'm not the attorney for the city. I'll make that clear here. But there is a difference between getting a judgment and having somebody have a barnacle removed and agree to something. So if you're going to take that route, it's going to be important to talk to city attorney here so that if you come up with an agreement, it's going to be enforceable, because there is that difference. So again, I think nobody sitting here will be surprised. As I said last time, I respect your efforts and your perspective, but I respectfully disagree with the recommendation to use the barnacle for enforcement purposes. I have concerns about its likely effectiveness, along with the visual messaging that it sends to visitors and community members. I'm also really unclear on how these amounts owed by violators A through G have accumulated to the extent without more effective enforcement efforts having been employed. And then as a side issue, and I know people here may not know the answer to that, but, you know, we've increased parking fine amounts, we've extended hours of enforcement, and we've eliminated warning tickets. I haven't been on council for that long, but my understanding is at least a portion of that is to go toward a parking structure. Yet we don't move forward with a parking structure every time we talk about it. And so one question I have, or I'm interested to really more clearly understand and revisit whether or not we're judiciously using these parking fees and whether the current fee structure, the enforcement hours, and the elimination of warning tickets are indeed warranted. And that may be the case, but I just don't understand that at this point, given not moving forward with the parking structure. So again, I respect your work. I respectfully disagree.
Well, one thing on that is the Downtown Management Board is a separate entity and make those decisions. And to report back to us, I feel this is a common courtesy to come back with the barnacle. They could have instituted the barnacle themselves.
Yes.
Okay, but they had the plan ahead to come to us and ask us and state, this is where we'd like to go with this. I agree with you. There are issues in the past that are sadly been carried through for years. Legal opinion or not, maybe. But I support this because I feel any city you go to, you will see booting. You will see deadbeats booted. You'll see them towed. You can watch the TV program and see it if you want to see more. But I think we need to, if it enlightens people to pay their meters so they don't come to the ticket piece of it. Plus, at the same point, it gets them into the office to meet with April, Amy, and start talking about a payment plan. So I'm in favor of the barnacle. Mr. Wagner.
I would like to make a motion to approve the proposed resolution that would authorize the city manager to implement additional parking enforcement tools, including towing and use of the barnacle vehicle immobilizer on a trial basis.
Second to motion.
I have a motion from Mr. Wagner and a second from Mr. Shields. Any other discussion, council, that you'd like to make? Does the public wish to weigh in on this?
If I may, I'd like to.
You mean to step?
Thank you.
Jennifer Shorter. I do not live in the city, but I do own a few properties downtown, including 301 East Lake Street. I'm on the parking committee and have been for a number of years, was off for a couple of years. Mr. Moore, to speak to history, when we raised the fines and things like that, and we said we wanted to build a parking structure, one of the tools that we needed in our toolkit at that time was the ability to tow or boot. And that part did not get passed, which was fine. But however, what you see with the list that Amy created was that it's created people who don't feel that we have any teeth, that don't feel that there's anything behind it, and they don't mind racking up $20,000 in debt of parking tickets because they don't feel there's anything behind it, right? But if we were to go out, they were to go out one morning and not be able to move their car because there is a barnacle on it, sends a clear message that we do have teeth. And we can at that point remind them that there's free parking within 2 blocks of any space in downtown Petoskey. So if we could simply get A through J plus all the other people underneath that's thousands of dollars as well, to be retrained and to get them to move to the free parking zones that we have, that would be a huge win. and would then help us to maybe in the future not even need another parking structure because we're creating the movement in downtown with the parking spaces that we've always tried to have. Thank you.
Thank you. I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Wagner.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Demore.
Nay.
Walker.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 4-1. Next is a discussion regarding a purchase policy. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. I was asked to put this on for a discussion. Obviously, this will likely result in a number of potential meetings just to kind of work through kind of a policy, if you will, that has some date on it that we've been using over the course of several years. So certainly there's opportunities for us to move forward with an update to this policy. Typically we, or I, as in my role as city manager, would kind of put some thoughts on what this could look like from a day-to-day standpoint. I have not done any of that at this point. Certainly have ideas, but wanted to at least have it on for a discussion. I think the policy overall, and I've accumulated a number of purchasing policies from colleagues across the state, and Sarah's done some good research on this topic as well. So certainly you have a lot of cumbersome policies. As you all know, we are a small work group. We do not have a purchasing department. We all kind of take that responsibility on. Finance does a great job of facilitating. We have a number of checks and balances. Finance signs off on every check. I sign off on every check. So there's a lot of eyes on what we do. And for good reason. So certainly it's my desire, hopefully not to create an overly burdensome policy. Not saying that this is, I think overall it's pretty straightforward. I guess the questions that I have would be more under the procedures. What authority do you give the city manager before purchases need to come back to you? The policy that is from 1994-ish, there's a lot of time that has gone on since then. I think in my review of different communities, I think the purchasing authority has been, updated over the course of years. And so hopefully there's some consideration to do that. The policy currently does have a carve out for utilities or enterprise funds. As you can imagine, just a simple transformer is $30,000. So if we had to come up here every time to purchase a transformer, we're looking for one with the new hotel going in Resort Township, and it's 92 weeks out. So they're a long lead item, so we don't want to put further barricades in front of. And again, this is enterprise funds, this is a business fund. It's not a general fund use. So I'm hoping there's some consideration for potential carve outs for enterprise funds so we can continue to do business without slowing things down further. But certainly everything's fair discussion, and I know this will be likely a multi-meeting process, which is great. So certainly interested in any and all input and feedback, and we'll continue to kind of put this forward in a way that makes the most sense for all. So,
well, the boilerplate, we could discuss that. That's one piece of it. There's two pieces, basically, the boilerplate piece of the first 3 pages. And then the last piece is what was the resolution from January 4th to 1994. And that's the amount that is listed And I point out to the 20,000 sealed competitive bids, the 5,000 services purchases without a bid, without coming to council for the city manager. Or the 10, and there's also the 10,000 that needed to be approved by city council if it's over 10,000. There's a 5,000, a 10,000, and the 20,000, of course, with the sealed bids, which is utilized. So those are the three numbers. And I know maybe somebody has looked at it, the boilerplate of it, and feels that that needs to be looked at. Has the city attorney looked at this yet?
There's really nothing for him to look at. This was just a draft of a sample. So he'll obviously be involved in what we put forward. I just want to remind council as well, like all of our capital improvement projects that you have approved and will approve going forward, those are bid out projects. Like when Mike does a street project, we're not just grabbing, you know, Joe Blow off the street. We are doing sealed bids for those, and those are carried forward in that format. So we do bid out a lot of projects. The other side of it is when we look at professional services, we have a number of engineers, consultants that we've used for a long time and for various reasons. We have consultants that are dedicated to wastewater services. They know our plant. They know every inch of that facility. So we like having long-term contractual relationships with vendors, with consultants that help us through. Because if we have an emergency and we don't have relationships built with a consultant, why is that consultant going to pick up the phone at 2 a.m. versus if we have long-term committed relationships with consultants and engineers, they know that we're a long-term customer. We built that rapport with them. So there's value in that. There's value in having, in Mike's case, you know, the GRPs in town, the HRCs, Hubble and Clark that we use for the water side. So we've established a lot of long-term, and it may sound like we're just giving work to the same consultants, but in a lot of cases, these are specialty. And it's very difficult in our region to find consultants that will do business up here. So when you have those relationships built, it's important to continue to move those forward. Again, that's my opinion. And then obviously the Beckett and Raider situation, we've used them for a variety of projects from a design service standpoint. I think, you know, Petoskey is a beautiful, wonderful community. And I think it's that way because there's been a lot of foresight and thought put into what we do. It's not just, you know, going out, seeing who's that new designer that would come up and give us that input. And maybe, and there's value to some of that. I'm not saying there's not, but certainly getting new eyes on something is valuable. But there's also value in having consistency when you look at what our community looks like, what we want our community to be, you know, in 10 years down the road. So we've established a lot of long-term relationships with consultants and professional services. And the hope and desire is those would continue.
Council, where would you like to go with this? Do you have some questions that you would like for the discussion? Do you want a discussion a lot long-term one now, or would you prefer take this going back, send questions to the city manager regarding this, and then we could have another discussion in the next meeting that would be maybe more fruitful because we would have better awareness of what people want to know more of. Mr. Moore.
I'm interested to have Shane's input overall, but particularly as to 2A, B, and C. I would probably, again, I'm open to discussion, of course, but I would respectfully disagree. I don't think professional services should be exempted. I don't think the inclusion of professional services means that we can't continue to work with people who we've worked with for a long time. but it allows for a competitive process that would allow for perhaps better financial opportunities for the city and the consideration of new ideas. So that's just my thought. But again, I would begin with your input to start with. And then, of course, if Jim takes a look, or Rhonda, to see if they see anything that's missing or that they have concerns about. This was just brought to me as a recommended model policy.
And just to piggyback on that, we do, obviously, we look at our professional service. We do get quotes from our vendors. We make sure that they're in line with what we're asking. So we are certainly making sure that this is not we're not providing a blank checkbook for these folks. We're holding them accountable for what we're asking, and that's what our expectation is. So, yeah.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the context of this conversation. I think it's very helpful. I guess I would like to see, as part of like Shane's research or feedback, we've had several situations where it's we've Parks and Rec, for example, has gone out to bid on projects and they even haven't gotten any quotes back, or the quotes that came in recently, just a few months ago, the quotes that came in for a project that Kendall was organizing came in at so far superseded whatever was budgeted that we had to table that. And that I know also in my context of experience as a government worker as well, sometimes people don't want to quote the public sector anymore because they're like, oh, you have to get 3 quotes. Oh, you're just going through the motions. Oh, we're not going to no, we're not going to get it. So we're not going to bother. And I don't know how that would kind of influence other governmental agencies as they go through the RFP process. So, and I don't know if that's across the board, like public sector versus private. But I can see where there are some challenges embedded that maybe a policy, as long as the policy considers like the context of those very specific situations that when we've gone out to bid, what has resulted as a result of that. And that maybe, and I didn't really realize that this might be an option, it's also about where are the funds coming from. So if you're talking about like from general fund versus like from the utility company, because they are an enterprise fund and self-sustaining, maybe that weighs differently. So those are my only inputs, and I'm open to however council and others choose to proceed with the conversation and the policy.
Mr. Wagner. Thank you, Mayor, and Shane and all. So I'm thinking of my own businesses, which is consulting the last 24 years. And we tried a couple of RFPs and we've always lost. So we just stay the heck away from them completely, to your point. And what we try to do is offer the best value we can from a consulting standpoint, and essentially don't have competition. And so I could see those circumstances where somebody can come in with really creative ways. And if we over structure and you can't really compare apples and oranges, I'd be concerned about that. But I'm for having a policy that allows flexibility and it doesn't make it difficult to run the city.
Mr. Shields. Thank you, Mayor. From a high level, I really like this outline in this example document. I like what's included, like the format. In regards to the long-term contractors and relationships, I agree with my colleague, Mr. Moore, in the need to possibly include those in this. And it's not a doubt of the city doing due diligence in who they hire. I think it's more, from my perspective, a transparency, public transparency situation, an opportunity for us to hear and hopefully support city staff, or if there's a need for council or an opportunity, the council sees to then challenge something, or a community member can then have an avenue to challenge something that is being done in the contract services. So it opens up that opportunity. And I think what I see here is including that allows for that to happen. I agree. I think there should be flexibility, and I'd be concerned about something too rigid. And ability to work with the situation of not having too many quotes or et cetera, and then delaying necessary services. And for that, I also agree with the carving out of the enterprise funds, not making that bureaucratic. I think we should be proud of our enterprise funds, a government that is operating efficiently, and we can point to that. And so I would want to make sure we are protecting that flexibility and efficiency very much so. So whether that's carving it out or having lots of flexibility, those are some of my high level comments. But I thank Mr. Moore for bringing this example here. I think it's a great one to build from.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor.
Oh, anybody else wish to speak, Mr. Moore? I thank Mr. Moore for bringing forward this stuff. It's been long overdue of us at least reviewing the amounts and in the process. And so by opening this up, we will be also, I'm sure, discussing all of this. So I'm going to turn it over.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry about that, Mayor. I'll put some thoughts to this. This will kind of be a regular placeholder on our agenda going forward. And as you want to get me feedback, certainly we'll keep a working copy of this going forward and hopefully get to a point where there's some consensus here on a policy that we can all work with. So I'll put my thoughts to it, and then again, keep it on as a placeholder going forward.
My biggest fear is that I don't want to see the city not moving forward on projects, on activities.
Yeah.
That the staff does not have the opportunity to bring forward stuff all the time. And I just hate to see us lose opportunities and lose events in process by quagmiring it down with too many limitations and regulations. But I think council, you guys, we always have worked through stuff and we've always come up with good stuff. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to work, Shane, to get us back more stuff on this, send questions and comments to him. And like you said, this isn't this is not going to have an adoption next month, probably not for several meetings, because let's take it and look at it and go step by step. I think there are some pieces here that are segmented that we can look at. Amounts.
Yep.
Contractual labors. So I'm looking forward to working with that. I think it's going to be, I think we'll come up with something good as we always do.
And I'll also loop in, obviously, the city attorney and make sure we have our legal bases covered as well.
If you see something of a city that you know that is really outstanding, send it forward to Shane, and Shane can share with us as well, okay? Next, before we adjourn, we have city council comment. Ms. Walker, I'm not going to start with you. I'm going to start with Ms. Demore, the first ward.
Okay, one thing, I had a constituent comment asking if there was a way to have easier access to the zoning website. So something maybe on the face page of the city with a link or something like that. People were having trouble finding it. So I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, the way our site, and I don't know what those things are called, the buckets, it's called a bucket. On the main page, we have 5, I'm not an IT.
Categories or
5 main things that we can highlight at once. Mike really wanted to get some public works projects out there because we're doing it. So it pushed our zoning off the main screen. You have to kind of tab over and hit the arrow to get to it. So I think that caused a little bit of like, where is it? I can't find it. Well, it's there. Yeah, it'd be better just to show you.
Rubbish took precedent.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So we received a phone call as well, and we did fix this last week. Well, didn't fix it, but we added. So our departments are under services, planning and zoning. And zoning said they were at the zoom out or something.
I just thought, since this is a 2-year project, having a cube or something on the face page, if it was possible. that made it really simple for
So
people.
she hasn't done that yet. I thought she was gonna do that. So anyway, it was talked about and I thought they were doing that. So planning and zoning, right here in this flyout, it's going to say zoning ordinance review or zoning reform, whatever, to be consistent message. So it will be there. This is what Shane was
talking about,
talking about. We are only limited to 5 boxes here. So there are important projects that are forward facing that does push that out. So, I mean,
Can you add an extra tab at the top, Sarah? Just a tab zoning.
I can try, I don't know, a lot of that's already programmed by the web developers. You mean like adding it next to home, like
Yes.
up here?
Yeah, just something.
I don't know if we're able to do that or not. I will play around with it. The consensus that you want a button up there.
If you could put a button up there, that would, make it easier.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't get any calls.
Well, the other option that we talked about. The other option, you may have seen on other websites, there's usually like a lower right-hand corner, a box. Usually we use it, we don't use it very often because it's in your face and you have to X out of it. But let's say, for example, a water boil notice. It's to get people's attention. We could turn that on and basically in the lower right-hand corner, there'd be a box and it would say zoning reform information. And you have to click it and it would go right to that page that John Ecoangeli has built, because that is completely separate from this web page.
I'm just thinking that transparency is going to be key here as we move forward, and the easier we make it for people. And if you're already hearing from people that they can't find it. So that's why I raised it. I understand you have to problem solve.
Yeah.
So
Sarah now is gonna look at it, she'll see what she can do. Next meeting, she'll come back and give us feedback.
Yeah.
that's
All
good.
right?
Then just a brief YAC update, Youth Advisory Council. The application review is underway this week. It was really interesting. We got a almost equal balance between 10, 11, and 12th graders, just kind of miraculously, which I thought was awesome. And so we will continue to keep you posted. Thank you.
Ward 3, Mr. Wagner. Because I go one way or another. I'm gonna fix that.
I like it. Two things. One is, and this could go to the website too, actually, but I received a note from, well, actually, I'll start with NLEA. So Northern Lakes Economic Alliance Summit was this past week, and I had the opportunity to join Shane and Kendall and close to 300 attendees. Very good program. I think it's great to see our investment in NLEA doing some great work. We have an outstanding new leader. The kickoff speaker is a new president of Kilwins, and super great guy, moving his family up here. And so, well attended. Every county commissioner was there from Emmet County, by the way. I was a little surprised. So thanks for that. So one of the people I spoke with there is Jennifer Wixon from the college, who leads the child care initiative. And she asked me if I could please get this shared with all of you. There's an event next week, Wednesday, May 29th, 8:30 to 10 at the Barora Learning Center. To learn more about the child care initiative. Our leadership Little Travers class that graduates this coming Friday, that was their project they helped fund. And sorry,
Isn't it Thursday?
They graduate on Thursday, yeah.
is it Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
Thursday, it's on my calendar.
Thursday, 5:00.
Okay. No, that's right. Everything's Thursday at 5:00. There's 5 events going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, I cannot make this on the 29th, but I think it'll be a great event. So what Jennifer Wixon pointed out to me is that in order to get a hold of city council members, you have to click on an individual name and fill out a form to get to us. And I would be willing under my bio to just have bwagner@petoskey.us. So somebody could
Is it already there? I think there's a concern about spam doing that, and so, but we put your email address back in there, I believe, if you want to go there. But that's the reason for that is,
Got it.
the bots that are out there doing their thing, that has your email address.
Oh, okay. She apparently didn't go there. There you go.
Before it was just contact and it would go to the form.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, this is where, well, no, it is
That's
not
what
that
people
people.
pretending to be Jews.
Pretending to be me. What do they want? Money? If I get a hold of you, I'm gonna ask you to send cash, so.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Miss Walker.
Ward
Ward 4.
Thank you, thank you. I also will be attending this childcare initiative on I think it's Wednesday, the 28th, right, next week. And I was wondering, it's intended to be for like elected officials and government representatives and also businesses. I think for me, I'm probably gonna show up with 3 generations just to be like, here's the proof of how, you know, the need for childcare is so profound in our community and it affects multi-generations of families. So I look forward to these kind of initiatives and really appreciate the lead that North Central Michigan College has taken and creatively finding these solutions for childcare, just like they have for, you know, public transportation, livable wages, affordable housing. These are like the trifecta or the 4 issues that are most pertinent in our community. So I look forward to those opportunities. And we have another baseball tournament this weekend at Petoskey High School. 4 teams will be competing for a regional title. So also looking forward to all of those. The parks are looking very well kept and well maintained. I'm so impressed with what our Parks and Recreation and Department of Public Works staff have been able to do to just get everything freshened up and cleaned up, and everything's looking really nice. So thank you so much.
Can you just give a childcare postscript quick?
Go for it.
Just really to follow up on Lindsay's comments, I was at a meeting too for the Women's Resource Center and they've got their new building and they're hoping that square footage wise that will allow for additional childcare there as well. So thank you.
Mr. Shields, Ward 2.
Another nonprofit in the community reached out to Little Traverse Conservancy asking if we had housing, extra housing available, because we have some rental space for their summer employee that was currently paying over 50% of their monthly wage for their housing. Not that we needed one more example of the housing crisis that we're in. But I also want to note that Strong Towns has a new book out called The Housing Trap. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard one idea in it that cities and towns can shift their local housing market on their own. There are ways to solve the housing crisis locally without depending on the federal and city grants that are out there to solve the capital stack gaps. Their answer is in the policies that can be made to facilitate a local market for smaller homes in smaller housing units that are at a lower price point. And we as a city, like many other cities are embarking on this effort, looking at these policies and doing a zoning reform. And zoning reform has the potential to establish those policies that favor smaller starting type housing. So we need much more of that. Thank you.
What was the name of the book, Derek?
The Housing Trap.
There was a movie like that, wasn't there?
Coach.
Parent Trap. Money Trap.
The money pit. We had our first main meeting on the Arts Commission May 9th. Moving forward, we've basically identified a location that would be our first project. That would be at Sunset Park. I may be coming back to you in the future with some requests. I went to the Women's Resource Center, groundbreaking for their child care center that's going in, where St. Michael's was up on Division Road. Summit Park. I don't know if you attended May 11th, the Arbor Day celebration, you could receive service berries. It went really well. It was a constant, it was a constant flow of people coming through. It was really great. They were really happy with it. I went and had lunch and spoke at the Friendship Center on the 16th. If you are old enough to go there, you should probably at some point stop in. I don't know how old you have to be. Brian, you could go. Turtle, you could go. Audrey, you qualify.
Watching the eye contact from this.
Oh, there's more. There's more. Leadership Little Travis wasn't mentioned. That's on the 23rd. That'll be at 5 o'clock. 6 o'clock, 5:30 is swirl at the Crooked Tree. I also was asked to sit on a panel with the Attorney General Nessel on recovery communities that's coming up. And meeting with her with a group of representatives. Also, on May 29th, I'll be going out to Little Traverse Bay. They've asked me to come out and take a tour and have lunch there. So good food, at least. Also, Sarah and I have organized working with schools. We'll have two different days, school kids coming through here. They will be going to the fire station, the museum. They'll be coming here, sitting in your seats with questions such as how old should you be to jump off the break wall without your parents? Should we have fireworks every night of the year? If not, why? How fast do cars go? Too fast, fast enough, not fast enough? Some of those questions that kids get up here and get to have some conversations and then vote on. So I tried to instill what it's like to be making decisions. And what I like is all the teachers discuss some of that and they come up with reasons rather than just a yes or a no. So that's really exciting. So there being no further, did you want to say something? No. Okay, you looked at me and I thought, there being no further business before this council, I call it